Hello, everyone. Sorry for delay. It's and sometimes it will be yes. Okay. Thank you for joining for us. Today we have a talk. It's about accessibility testing. Yes, namely strategy. As you know, it's very important. And let me introduce Natalia. Natalia is software testing lead software testing engineer and accessibility testing expert. Natalia, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tanya. Hello, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here today. My name is Natalia Potapova, and I do believe that 11 years ago, I did one of the most important and right choices in my life. I decided to be a software testing engineer, and right now I'm a QA lead, and almost 11 years I've been working for EPAM. My background is in manual functional testing of web applications, mostly content management system based. I'm experienced in setting up testing processes and strategies from the scratch, team management. I like testing and I'm still involved in testing process as a tester, and my recent primary focus is accessibility. In scope of the current event, I would like to share my experience regarding a great opportunity I received 1 year ago to set up an accessibility testing strategy on an ongoing project. And let me show our agenda. I'll give you a brief overview of the project background and accessibility target we had. I'll dive then into the details of some kind to-do list I prepared with detailed steps and accessibility-related ideas I introduced, and will share conclusions I've observed. By the end of my talk, I hope you will walk away with some insights related to accessibility testing strategy, and in general, will find this information useful for you. So, regarding the rules, I leave ample time at the end of my presentation and will be happy to answer your questions. So feel free to ask them. On this positive note, let's get started. Regarding the project and information I had at the beginning, that it was a Drupal content management systems-based platform with configurable components, some kind of Lego, I would like to say, for content authors. And based on this platform, around 60 real production sites existed at that moment. And the team was active with development of new redesigned version of this platform. In parallel, the client requested audits for accessibility, and this activity was performed by Level Access vendor for some production sites, and they reported around 400 accessibility-related violations. And the client requested that the new redesigned platform should be compliant with WCAG 2.1 AA, and received confirmation of this fact based on the new audit results in the future. So, and the important circumstances we had at the beginning, that team didn't have experience with accessibility at all. And moreover, we had limited time frames for all activities in general to deliver the product in live. And team capacity for sure was limited by functional testing, and general focus was on development. So, taking into account all these details, I needed to develop the process on this project. So, let's move on. And the first step I started with was collecting information. So, I needed to find contact point on the client side and clarify and find out as much as possible regarding the expectations regarding accessibility. Whether any legal commitments, laws existing in the region, and regarding the product in general and area they are working. And as a result, in our testing strategy, I added the information that our main document regarding the accessibility requirements and target aim to be compliant with WCAG requirements. We are not responsible for interpretation, any laws related to accessibility, etc. So, and why it's important in general to understand any restrictions. For instance, cookies preferences. In our application, we had some floating component. It was called important safety information, and it had design limitation limited by laws, and as a result, it's also it also affected some accessibility related scenes. So we were limited by laws regarding this stuff. I would recommend to clarify whether any target group specific exists, just compliant with WCAG, or probably some group or targets regarding the type of disabilities will be in main focus for your client. So it's important also to know the expectation and whether any documents and process exists, official procedure exists on the client side regarding the document template. Probably some specific sections will occur and you also need to cover. And testing by focus group, I asked this question because when you just would like to be compliant with WCAG, it's fine also. But I was thinking about like big vessel or the strategy, global strategy, and to plan to recommend or advise, for instance, to perform some kind of end-to-end scenarios or acceptance user experience testing by people with disabilities, and was thinking whether we can propose such idea in general or probably as a part of user acceptance testing clients. The client has such focus group, and it will be a part of our flow and testing strategy. The next point was important for me related to the tools and budget we have. So any existing tools on the client side and cloud services and resources we can use. For instance, on the client side, as a corporate cloud service for different browsers, operating systems, and devices was South Lab. And the moment when I tried to find out whether it's possible to cover or use South Lab for accessibility-related scenes, it was limited by activation screen readers, especially NVDA screen reader on Windows operating systems. And as a result, we needed to find or propose other solutions regarding these scenes. So clarify what services and what tools you will have. Any kind of security check if you're going to use some free extensions, especially when it will be installed in client infrastructure, and in general, tool sets should be approved to avoid any security-related compliance. And whether you can propose and look at some paid version of extensions, just for instance, Axe free version or paid version to have more widely another coverage in comparison to the free version. The next step or point I also try to clarify compatibility metrics. So which browsers, operating systems, devices we need to support. And I requested statistic of usage by devices, operating systems, browsers. So we had Google Analytics, and as a result, it was easy provided, no issues with that information. If you don't have, for instance, access to this information, you can use global statistics for the region. I provided a link to the global stat counter resource. For my previous projects, I actively used it. And for sure, it's important to know accessibility-related statistics, and WebAIM resource provides reports regarding the most popular browsers, screen readers for people with disabilities, and you need to combine or map statistics of usage and accessibility related information. And as a result, understand what you can cover, which resources you have, whether real devices or cloud services. If not, probably request to think about virtual machines with proper operating systems and browsers, and so on. So it's important to understand scope of your work regarding accessibility testing. The next point for me was important regarding and covers third-party systems and components, because in our application we had some third-party components, players, and it's impossible to make accessible application when some part of workflow or part of end-to-end scenario doesn't work because you have an accessible video player, for instance, or some important element. And I asked whether any procedure exists to assess third-party components and system regarding accessibility stuff, whether they provide any VPAT reports, etc. And if no process, I highlighted that it's important to define responsibility and in general process how we're going to use for new components and assess third-party systems and components that we are going to use, and whether anybody on client side will approve them if we know, for instance, that they have some violations and issues related to accessibility. And next steps were related to audit results analysis. As I said, we had this information, and for me it was helpful. So if you have any kind of previous audits related to accessibility, analyze them, because it helped me to understand that, for instance, a lot of violations were related to third-party components and also content. And as I said, it was a configurable components, and for me it was like a point that I needed to address to the client, that content authors should be experienced or aware about accessibility and configure content in proper way to avoid violations and in general to make application accessible. And in general, you need to set up a process for this audit results analysis, whether the team will be involved, how it will be tracked, etc. And the last but not the least, team that you have, like UX UI team, user acceptance testing station team, and content authors. Just at the beginning, clarify about their experience and expertise regarding accessibility, because it's important for next steps, how you will separate responsibilities through the software development lifecycle process, and whether in general you can rely on this team in accessibility responsibility. So the next step was related to the project software development lifecycle and team, different or separated teams involved in this process, and to understand, as I said, accessibility related scenes and responsibility in general. So we had enough like simple setup with distributed teams. We had a separate UX UI design team and stage of review. Like we groomed these designs before starting working on user stories. Then we have approved and groomed before approving user stories, development testing, UAT testing phase, production release, and content setup. So, and this information I will show at the end of my presentation how it was, which transformation I applied and improvements we added on each stage related to accessibility. And in general, you need to understand existing testing process if accessibility strategy is implemented not at the beginning of the project, but it was introduced later. So the next step, define approach related to accessibility and responsibility. You need to understand what you will test: pages, components, happy paths or critical paths, end-to-end scenarios, define out of the scope. All of these in details, they can affect, expand your scope of work, and you need to match this information to the capacity you have. Approach that can be used in accessibility as in functional testing or any other. So you can use shift left testing or reactive testing when on some stage, when component already developed and introduced on, for instance, staging environment, or latest stage when accessibility is not a part of functional testing or in sprint testing. And finally, in our strategy, we agreed on critical path testing regarding accessibility, shift left testing, and per components. So when I'm talking about critical path, it means that we define it or declare it in our accessibility testing strategy that edge cases or configuration of components with some edge cases, that they are out of the scope. That our main primary focus to make critical paths accessible. Shift left testing, it means that on each stage of software development lifecycle, we try to introduce accessibility checks. And per component, so as soon as a component was ready, we checked it from configured and checked from accessibility perspective, but I will expand on the details later on. What was introduced, as I said, on grooming stage, I prepared checklist for component grooming from accessibility perspective. So questions related to navigations, how screen readers should announce like accessible name for some components when we need to hard code some accessible name, or if it's like configurable, so how it will be and what information will be announced. So all things important from accessibility perspective for component grooming. And also, as I said, our focus was on critical paths. We prepared how to define this minimum sufficient quantity or configuration of components to cover this critical path. And also, as a result, accessibility stuff or points were added to definition of ready on before approval of proper user story. So accessibility was a part of user story. And regarding third-party components, as I said, we didn't have process, but I highlighted this point. And as a result, we defined a process. And it was the following, that responsibility for assessment of third-party components and systems will be and approval will be on the client side. And if during testing audit results some violations related to the third-party system, we should have official channel to inform these third-party owners about violations in their components or systems, and organize like this informing via official channels to show importance for the client to fix this issue. And regarding our team involvement, also we mentioned in strategy, if team capacity allows to fix or we have access to the code, we need to think twice whether we are ready and would like to add changes on our side, or we address these questions to third-party components owners. So it's up to you how you organize, but on our side, we did this exercise. Next point regarding define how to test and levels, which evaluation tools and manual checks, assistive technologies that you will use. Also, you need to be sure that you don't have limitations with evaluation tools and assistive technologies for browsers. You define it in your compatibility metrics, and define what kind or what levels of testing. So new feature testing, smoke, regression, and how you will perform it. The next point regarding approach and responsibility, finally, we define responsibility for accessibility through our software development lifecycle for UAT team, business analysts, dev team, QA team, UAT, content authors, and if you have any other stakeholders or team in your process, you can also think about responsibility and whether any gaps or potential risk on their stage regarding accessibility. So finally, we introduced and approved a unified tool set through all the teams. So it means that we try to use unified tools on UI, for UX team, for instance, for color contours checks, for headings as well. For content authors, we proposed the same tool set and they weighted also regarding the preferred tools. But in general, to sum up, through all stages of our development life cycle, we had unified tool set. I prepared how to documents with all the details and videos, how to use them. So we had enough detailed knowledge space. Responsibility metrics was clear, defined, and approved by our client. And as a result, our definition of done was extended. So we specified the quality gates regarding the accessibility stuff, whether a story can be closed and moved to the next stage if it has high priority, accessibility related high priority issues, and who will be responsible for accepting known issues regarding accessibility. In our case, it was a product owner, and also from law's perspective and limitations, whether he or she approves presence of known issues regarding accessibility. So we need to be sure that no contradicts and issues with laws as well at the same time. So clear responsibility regarding accessibility. I already mentioned and provided details regarding compatibility metrics. So you need to approve where you will be tested and where and how, and moreover, which resources you will use. As a result, the same screen readers, documents, videos, detailed user guide, approved tool set. Finally, we proposed EPAM MobiTrue service for compatibility testing, and compatibility metrics was involved browsers by priority and limitations and risk. And finally, for us, for instance, testing on mobile devices was out of the scope for some period of time. So QA artifacts. QA task for sure, test cases or checklist, and bug report templates. Here, the enough detailed information regarding the artifacts we had. I would like to direct attention here mostly on checklist approach. Taking into account we had limited capacity and timelines, we didn't create test cases. I proposed to use a hybrid approach and checklist. And for all other scenes, like bug reporting templates, we provided detailed templates with some wordings, examples, how to define whether it's a bug or not. Also mentioned that some screen readers in combinations with browsers can have known issues, and before reporting this bug, you need to be sure that it's real a bug, but and not a known issue of some specific assistive technology and browser. And all of these things were stored in our Confluence space as well. So regarding checklist, simply put, it was a test suite. Primary checklist and general checklist, because we had configurable components, and responsible for testing QA should understand what he or she has in configuration and what to check. And in different configurations, so we can have buttons, links, some other elements, and they are reusable from component to component. And because of that, I decided to create a set of general checklists for checking zoom in, images, buttons, checkboxes, etc., and have a separate primary checklist for a component that will have specific information for this component and reference to the general set. To prepare this information, I used shared or available in public checklist. Also, here you can see some example of accessibility insight tool, and any details you can find. And for sure, VCAC is your primary checklist to prepare information. And on this slide, just some examples. So the first one is general checklist with VCAC reference to exact success criteria, useful resources, and steps. So, and the bottom of the page, you can see that we had footer, and I specified links to Figma, designs, epics, and steps like notes, what is the minimum meaningful content, decorative, and other steps involved specific information about footer. And as a part of primary checklist, we had end-to-end scenarios that should be checked using screen reader mode and just keyboard navigation. So regarding the testing, also the next important thing that we had is agreement to test accessibility on configurable test data, configurable baseline, production baseline, and for this baseline, we had a separate QA environment. This data was dissimilar as in production, and designs were a source of truth regarding this test data configuration. We had some instruction how to prepare this test data, strict naming convention to avoid mess on our environment. And we used for this configuration minimum sufficient quantity checklist, or that I mentioned in the beginning of my speech. And we cloned these baselines through the environments for issue reproducing. And in general, it was our agreement that this environment with accessibility baseline, it will be like customer face to show in any moment where we are with the accessibility stuff. And the aim of this test data baseline was to avoid double work and time-consuming activities related to test data configuration for smoke and regression. So environment with baseline. Also, we clearly defined an execution process with levels and defect validation process, and had a proper instruction. And in our task, we just had a reference to this specific page with all details, like run the tool, analyze results manually, whether it's false positive results or it's real violation, then perform primary checklist execution, etc., etc. And final step was collect observed results and add them to the primary checklist for next iteration with testing. So if defects validation or regression testing, so our case always had reference to the previous results, latest results regarding execution of this component. And on this slide and this step, it's important to define in your accessibility testing strategy whether and how you will perform smoke testing for accessibility, whether it will be exploratory testing or end-to-end scenarios, how you will perform regression before release, and KPIs for sure to show the progress and track where you are. Regarding our project, unfortunately, I don't have much details and information to share because our project was finished before we released in production. Our scope mostly was related to new feature testing, like accessibility and scope of new feature testing. And we plan to use exploratory testing. So this approach with checklist allowed us to develop maturity of our team in accessibility, because from the checklist, I'm talking about general checklist, testers, they should understand which part is applicable for the specific configuration they have. And as a result, I assumed and planned that team maturity will grow and we will be ready to perform exploratory testing after the releases on proper environments. And regression testing approach, we plan to use risk-based when some components or major part of our application were under changes, and before primary releases or major releases, we plan to perform full regression testing. And KPIs, some examples I showed, but it's not limited only by these things. And the last but not least step, important to mention in the strategy, how often it should be reassessed and person responsible for this activity. In our strategy, we define that we are at the beginning, like growing in accessibility scenes, and in general, we do not complicate our strategy by assistive technologies, and we try to optimize our strategy and declare that if any audit results will show that our strategy is not sufficient, if any user feedbacks or something related to accessibility in general occurred and it will be like concerns for us, we will reassess our strategy. And also we define and reassess compatibility metrics at the beginning of new year to be sure that we are like on track and in general test what is in focus for our end users. And as I promised, to show how the accessibility affected our software development lifecycle and responsibility and process. For UX UI team, we declared that design is a source of truth. We shared with designers accessibility-related checklist for UX UI team. Also, on the client side, trainings were organized and approved tool set for checking the designs that they are compliant regarding accessibility. On story grooming, we extended definition of ready, prepared checklist, and also the whole team passed trainings related to accessibility. Development stage, we introduced total validator tool that developers were responsible to use before releasing the build or the component in testing. Trainings and responsibility for happy paths. So it was like a part of their responsibility, performed keyboard navigation and keyboard and screen reader mode for happy paths to be sure that this component is ready for testing, for more detailed testing from accessibility perspective. For testing phase, again, definition of done, training, strategy, and detailed conference page. For UAT team, it was a separated team. Also, they conducted and passed through the trainings. We requested clear process from their side and tool set the same as we are going to use. Regarding the content setup, separated teams per sites, and also highlighted that proper percentage of violations were related to the content, and because of that, content authors should be experienced with accessibility scenes related to content. So too much details, but I hope you created a whole picture regarding the strategy we had. And I would like to share conclusions observed regarding this strategy. As I said, unfortunately, we didn't finalize the whole process till the audits and to compare how it was at the beginning and what we received. But even on stage of new feature testing till the end of the project, I can say that during configuration, we and in general approach with baselines on separate environment and baselines for components, we detected issues not only related to accessibility, but also user interface and even functional issues. So it means that it was like an additional level of checks. Also, deep understanding and improvements. It meant that when our QAs, they worked with checklists, as I said, they needed to understand what exactly is applicable for specific configuration and specific component. And as a result, it meant that they needed to define not applicable or applicable. And with the next iterations of execution of this checklist, their understanding what they are doing was growing. And also we introduced some improvements even in our platform. I'm talking about Drupal. So for instance, in media library, we realized that all media content, I'm talking about images, they have alternative text by default. No possibility to manage whether it's decorative content or it's meaningful. And we proposed, introduced a feature for our content authors, how to uncheck or make the media decorative from content author perspective and handle it in proper way on front end. Regarding knowledge sharing, as I said, we had checklist and for grooming stories, and the whole team here in information about accessibility and was involved in the discussion. And the last but not the least, efficient maintenance. So if any changes or new ideas or something important needed to be added in general checklist regarding links, accessibility and links or buttons, I needed to add these changes only in one place instead of million or a lot of places related to links. And again, all information was in one place because final report or observed information regarding critical paths and compatibility testing for some specific components was stored in our primary checklist. So it's the main conclusions I can share. And from my point of view and based on feedback I received from my teammates, it was enough useful and convenient approach regarding team maturity in accessibility area as well. So, yeah. And probably that's it from my side. Any questions? Tanya, thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Natalia. It's well, very interesting and useful. Okay, yes, we have some same questions to you, Natalia. Alexander asked you about step 7, content setup. What tool did you use? Yep, slide 7. What tools do you use?
For slide 7, it's here for audit results analysis or
content setup.
Content setup. So we didn't use any specific tool. As I said, it was like configurable components, and we just configure using production test data this component. For instance, we had a banner component with some elements like links, headlines, background images, and other things like inner text there. So using production test data, we needed to configure this component and check from accessibility perspective. And moreover, we analyzed which configurations that this component can have from accessibility perspective. And For instance, whether any background image can exist or no, whether interactive elements can be configured, and how much in this and which specific components and elements interactive can be configured there to check navigation order and so on. So because of that, we had minimum sufficient configuration. So to cover these critical paths and possible variations for these components configuration. Did I answer your question? So we didn't use any specific tool. We configured manually in Drupal our components with the possible variations we provided for our content authors for a specific component.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Natalia, to you from Christina.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, okay. Adding accessibility path to US development. How develop testing estimates were increased about USA?
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking about team US development
Development
were
testing
increased.
estimate increased.
So regarding dev team, I don't have this information. So it's like we define this step that it's their responsibility to run total validator, and the story or the component should be shouldn't without any errors detected by total validator. And for QA team, because we were like in the beginning, the first iteration with configuration and testing accessibility, they really took much time because of absence of experience. And with next iterations, we saw that approximately in twice the time for this activity was decreased. So, but exact digits I don't have.
Natalie, we have clarifications about US. US, not USA. It's a user story. It's a user story. It means user story.
I understand the question.
Okay.
So it's about user story and development. Yeah.
It's my mistake. It's my mistake. Okay. Next question. So sorry. Next questions. Sorry for the delay, guys. Okay, it's about. Okay. Have you faced any points during the project then design had to be changed because development then wasn't able to fill the desire because then it would have went against the accessibility requirements?
Yeah.
Natalie, it's a big
I hope I
question.
understand the question correctly. So, as a person responsible for accessibility on the project, I was involved in grooming when designers presented designs, and I addressed some concerns related to accessibility. And in my experience, it was even when design of some component was changed because, for instance, reflow point and success criteria will be affected, or even when important information, for instance, were provided by using just colors. Yeah, I addressed and highlighted that it's a violation, potential violation for us. So we need to think about avoiding using just colors for information, addressing important information, and as a result, designs were like new things were introduced in designs. Also, in my practice, it was like I highlighted a fail of success criteria, and they said that, for instance, we're limited by laws for our important safety information component we had, it was a floating component, and as a result, it occupied 60% of viewport, and it was not visible where the focus at this moment. And for instance, it wasn't keyboard accessible because it's a floating component. So set of issues, and they said that we are limited. It should work in strict way and nothing else. And as a result, we received official approval from designers, from product owner, put it in our Confluence that it's a known issue. And please, if any concerns regarding audit's result, we have a confirmation that it was approved and this known issue. So simply put, both variants when changes were added and when it was accepted as a known issue also were in my practice. But with time, I would say that when you constantly repeat that it will affect accessibility, it will be not convenient and so on, everybody involved in this discussion. And with time, I realized that our designers, they really presented from accessibility perspective, and they said, Natasha, we know that here you will have some concerns. We're already working on that, something like that. So
Okay,
it was
nice
like
question, Natalia.
possibilities from the team.
Okay, Natalia. And next questions about most hard part in introduction accessibility into the project.
The most hard. Everything wasn't easy. Okay, the most the latest thing was, for instance, I reported high priority accessibility bug, and dev lead came to me and said, Natasha, you can see here we have an accordion or some feature that doesn't work. It has high priority, and you're reporting that some element doesn't have accessible name or role, and who will use applications. So it's it's not so important in comparison to functional issues. And it was also difficult to involve everybody in your world of accessibility. And yeah, I would say that the most difficult was to set up communication ways with stakeholders on the client side and in the team to show importance of this work. And I do believe that our teammates' approach or understanding of importance what they are doing was changed when I showed or asked our blind QA. We have some people with disabilities in EPAM, and I asked him to pass some end-to-end scenarios in our application, and they saw real keyboard person, how they interact, and why for them, for such people, really important to be to have possibility to do everything that people without disabilities can do. And when they realized probably that it's not something that they don't know, it's a real person, it's our colleague. And after that, I realized and noticed that in our grooming sessions, even if I didn't ask questions or concerns addressed regarding accessibility, they can ask about their thoughts. And also such examples like my mom using mobile phone and extra large text. So do we have such checks in our accessibility testing strategy or not? So yeah. So to sum up, I would say that the most difficult was involve everybody around you in this process, that it's important, that it's also like that this accessibility testing strategy has the same importance because a lot of people with disabilities exist in the world, and yeah, you are doing a great job. But for sure, you need to have the same support from the client side. And when I presented the strategy and in general could organize communications way on the client side, and they were involved and they support me in my ideas and in general in work that we did for them. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. And last question, I think. Maybe not.
Mhm.
Did you use tools like Wave or IBM Report?
Yep, but the similar, as I already mentioned, we had Total Validator. Can expand on the details. Why? Because we found these tools on the client side, so they had pro licenses, and as a result, we just requested licenses for our team. And the next tool we use, it was Arc Toolkit. So because we decided and I proposed use this tool. For me, it was like more convenient. And in general, evaluation tools, especially free version, it's like personal preferences of the person who set up a testing strategy, yeah, based on their experience. So, and in comparison to Wave, I decided to use Arc Toolkit, and more we had Total Validator. So in our testing strategy, we had two tools.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Natalie.
I
It's
didn't
okay.
answer the last part.
Oh,
Yeah. So
what?
how you define it,
Next part.
issues can be hit or skipped. If you're asking about issues detected by tools, we know about false positive results, and for sure we need to reproduce and understand which exactly point of success criteria this detected issue fails. And for some tools, they detected issues, and we clarified with our devs and found out, for instance, that it's some like parsing or some issue of the tool because everything is fine with semantic of our code, and it so and reassess, so reproduce the issue manually to confirm that it's really reproducible and it's really a fail of proper success criteria to avoid false positive results. And final point, how to define whether to fix or not, we also assessed complexity, which efforts it will cost to fix this issue. And as I said, we had official process that all rejected or not fixed issues. When we confirm that it's really an issue, they should be approved by a product owner, and we marked them with proper tagging and collected separately these issues. I hope I answered your question.
I hope, yes. Okay, guys. Okay, Natalie, thank you very much. It was really interesting and useful for us. Thank you, guys, for joining. I hope see you to the next talk.
Bye.
Bye.